In a distant land called Skylands, a baby dragon has just been born and, on its very first day, it has to fight off a group of trolls who are trying to capture it. After defeating those creatures with his flame, Spyro meets Master Eon, who feeds the orphan baby and decides to take him to the Skylander Academy. 4 years later, Spyro welcomes the new freshmen who have just arrived at the academy. There, the cadets learn to defend Skylands against all evil and, at the end of their training, they receive the title of Skylander. In a few days' time, Spyro will graduate from the Skylander Academy, but Master Eon believes that he is not ready to take on such a responsibility, as his ego prevents him from thinking of anyone other than himself. One day, Master Eon takes the young dragon to see his secret vault, where he keeps the most precious relics of Skylands. Among them is the Skylander's book, and Spyro is electrocuted when he touches it. After graduation, every Skylander is drawn in that book and Master Eon says he can't wait to include Spyro in those pages. Ever since he was a hatchling, the dragon has shown himself to be a natural fighter and got the highest score in the Academy's history when he took the entrance test. However, his arrogance and self-centeredness may prevent him from passing the final test. That day, Chaos is in his kingdom formulating yet another evil plan to defeat the Skylanders. According to the villain, the person who gets hold of the sacred book will be able to control the Skylanders. So Chaos intends to attack during the graduation party to try and steal the book. While his colleagues train hard for the final test, Spyro takes the opportunity to throw a party. By dawn, the dragon is too tired to wake up in time for the most important test of his life. After all the students present have taken their obstacle test, Master Eon announces the end of the Olympics, but Spyro shows up at the last second to take the test. During the race, the dragon easily eliminates all his opponents, but ends up being struck by Chaos Hologram. Even so, he manages to finish the battle, but at the end of the day he discovers that both he and Hex have failed. The next day, Eruptor and Elf celebrate the fact that they made it to graduation, because that year only they and Bad Breath passed the final test. After drawing the new Skylanders in the sacred book, Master Eon asks Hugo to take him back to the vault and, just then, Chaos appears in the company of his assistant, Glumshanks. After stealing the book, the villain freezes it and, at that moment, all the Skylanders drawn in it are petrified. During the attack, Spyro is eating his snack, but when he sees the whole crowd fleeing from the stands, he realizes that something is wrong. When he arrives at the stadium, the dragon sees all his friends frozen and attacks Chaos with his flames. However, the villain manages to beat back the attack and throws the fireballs away while trying to cast a spell on Spyro. After knocking down his opponent, Chaos captures him with a large sphere of black magic and sends him out of the Skylander Academy. Before leaving, the man rips off Master Eon's beard and discovers the location of his secret vault. When he finally manages to get out of the sphere, Spyro flies back to the academy and attacks his opponent, but Chaos manages to stop him once again. After being knocked down, the dragon uses the trap his master created to electrocute his enemy and then releases his fiery breath to thaw the holy book. At that moment, all the Skylanders manage to break free and gather in the library to attack Chaos and his assistant. After being beaten up, the pair are thrown out of the academy and end up on an island full of ferocious sheep. That day, Spyro proves that he is ready to become a Skylander and earns a place on one of the pages of the holy book. When he returns to his lair, Chaos reveals that when he was inside the secret vault, he found a map containing the location of the light core, responsible for maintaining the balance of Skylands. Now, instead of defeating the Skylanders, the villain plans to destroy this core so that the entire universe collapses. On his first mission as Skylander, Spyro and his friends have to unclog the basement drain, which has been blocked by a large amount of beard hair. If that pipe bursts, all the plumbing in the academy will be disabled for several hours, so Spyro uses his fireballs to burn the waste that is causing the blockage and manages to solve the problem easily. However, Jet Vac wasn't happy about this, as he realized that the dragon has a hard time working as a team. So he decides to move in with Spyro and his friends so that he can keep a close eye on him and ensure that his impulsive nature doesn't jeopardize any missions. That afternoon, Master Eon informs him that the fallen forest is on fire and sends Spyro's team to solve the problem. However, because of Jet Vac and his overplanning, the group ends up being late for the forest and, when they get there, they discover that the fire has already been put out by Snapshot and Kaboom. Upon being informed of what has happened, Master Eon invites Skylander to lunch and says that he needs to learn to act more impulsively from time to time, as not every task requires a long plan to be carried out. Then, the next day, when his team has to fight a snake that spits fire, Jet Vac gives the new Skylanders room to act on their own, but none of them manage to defeat the creature. Just as the whole group is about to be devoured, Master Eon arrives on the scene and interrupts the training simulation. Luckily, that fire viper isn't real, because if it were, Spyro and his friends would be eliminated. Hours later, Kingpin arrives at the academy and presents the box capable of creating a Skylander robot from scratch. To create their new companion, the group has to teleport to the space of the imagination and, together, everyone imagines what they would like their new team member to look like. In theory, Sai is the missing link needed for Jet Vac and his friends to overcome their weaknesses as a team. After creating the robot, the group needs to help him figure out how to use his powers, and Spyro teaches him how to fly. Over the next few days, Elf, Eruptor and Jet Vac use their skills in battle to teach Sai how to be a true Skylander, as he is the only member of the team not to have graduated from the academy. After several days of intensive training, the team decides to carry out a new simulation with the Viper to assess the progress of its powers. However, with Sai's participation, the group becomes even more disorganized and is unable to carry out good teamwork, as the robot ends up getting in the way of the friend's performance. When he realizes that Sai has failed to fulfill the purpose for which he was designed, Kingpin decides to dismantle him and says that the robot must say goodbye to the Skylanders. That afternoon, while everyone is mourning the future loss of their friend, a real fire viper attacks them and the group tries to hide behind a large rock while Jet Vac thinks of a plan. At this point, the team discovers why they failed in their mission, because everyone was trying to mold Sai instead of letting him use his abilities freely. Now that their lives are in danger, the Skylanders decide to trust the robot and ask him to use his own fighting style to combat the snake. After Sai cuts off the creature's wings, the rest of the group splits up to attack it and together they manage to defeat it. When the Viper is already on the ground, the robot uses its potato launcher to deliver the final blow and manages to eliminate the monster. Just then, Master Eon and Kingpin appear and congratulate the youngsters on having managed to defeat a real fire viper. Upon hearing this, Spyro says that the victory would not have been possible without Sai's help and convinces the king to give up the idea of dismantling it, as the robot will certainly be useful to other Skylanders in the future. Thanks to her excellent performance in the defense simulation, Elf is invited by Master Eon to give a lecture to the freshmen. When they hear about the invitation, her friends congratulate her, as she will be the youngest Skylander to give a lecture. That afternoon, Elf notices that all the members of the academy have suddenly developed a fear of sheep and decides to start investigating why this has happened. After spending all night working on her investigation, Elf decides to take a nap to rest and comes across a giant sheep in her dreams. At this point, the animal uses the young woman's greatest insecurities to terrorize her, and Elf discovers that Dreamcatcher is the one who is causing people's phobia of sheep. The newcomer decided to use her ability to command the dream realm to upset her colleagues simply because she preferred to be a villain rather than act like a hero. Now that she has been discovered, Dreamcatcher must keep Elf in the dream realm forever, as she cannot allow her to reveal her secret. However, Elf soon discovers that she is also capable of controlling that universe. After all, it is she who is dreaming. The young woman traps Dreamcatcher and forces herself to wake up. At that moment, she comes across the freshman in her room and manages to capture her. Then Elf goes to give her talk and, after giving an inspiring speech, she reveals to everyone that Dreamcatcher was invading their dreams to terrorize them. Upon hearing this, Master Eon expels the freshman. Suddenly, Chaos and Glumshanks teleport into the academy to try to steal the map that leads to the nucleus of light. However, instead of going to the library, they end up in a room full of Skylanders and end up being arrested. That afternoon, the pair are sent to Cloudcracker prison and Dreamcatcher ends up being arrested along with them. The following week, Spyro and his friends are going to do an internship in the penitentiary, as all the new Skylanders have to stand guard for at least one day in that prison. When they get there, the group discovers that their badges are equipped with a chip that emits a powerful freezing ray that paralyzes the inmates. Before dismissing the newcomers, Snapshot reveals that if an inmate is causing too much trouble, all he has to do is tap his badge twice and he'll be sent straight to solitary confinement. On his first day in Cloudcracker, Chaos meets the Golden Queen in person and finds a way to get close to her, as he has fallen in love with the villain. As well as being able to turn anything into gold, the woman is also the leader of a gang who call themselves the Doom Raiders and invite Dreamcatcher to join their team. A few weeks ago, Golden Queen and her gang were plotting an escape and decided to invite Chaos to join them, so that they would have a perfect scapegoat. That afternoon, all the Doom Raiders do their best to provoke the new guards and force them to send each of them to solitary confinement. After getting rid of Golden Queen and her allies, the Skylanders discover that Chaos is holding a guard hostage and decide to send him to the hole along with the other inmates. When they saw him, Golden Queen and her allies were furious, as they needed chaos to distract the guards for longer so that they could escape. When he discovers that he was just a decoy, Chaos decides to use his trump card and claims to know the location of the nucleus of light to convince the Doom Raiders to let him join the escape. At this point, Snapshot discovers that a group of prisoners have been sent to solitary confinement and orders the new guards to go there to stop them trying to escape. However, when they get there, they see the villains fleeing through the black hole they built by combining their powers and try to paralyze them, but the group still manages to escape. That night, Chaos welcomes his new friends to his castle and discovers that his mother, Cassandra, is an old friend of the Golden Queen. Frustrated with his discovery, the villain decides to project his mind out of his body for a walk and finds the Skylanders camping in a forest, so he decides to make a surprise attack. Seeing her friends in danger, Elf tries to eliminate Chaos with her daggers, but ends up getting trapped inside the floating head and disappears after being struck by lightning. After supposedly eliminating the girl, Chaos leaves and Elf realizes that she is trapped inside his mind. Meanwhile, Spyro and the rest of the team hold awake to say goodbye to their late friend and feel guilty for not having been able to protect her. When she tries to get out of the villain's head, Elf realizes that as long as she's trapped inside, she can control him and anything that hurts him can also hit her. So when Chaos and Wolfgang start fighting, the young woman has no choice but to use her fighting skills to help her host win the battle. After emerging victorious in a duel against the strongest member of the gang, Chaos earns the respect of the Doom Raiders and manages to show them who's boss. Elf then controls her host's body and takes him to the Skylander Academy. Once there, the young woman has to prove to her friends that she is inside Chaos' mind and asks for their help to get out. After following Spyro's instructions, Elf manages to eject herself out of the villain's head and is welcomed by all of her friends. While the group hugs to celebrate Skylander's return, Glumshanks shows up and helps his boss sneak out of the academy. When he arrives home, Chaos is greeted by Wolfgang, who challenges him to a rematch and ends up taking quite a beating, because now Elf is no longer there to help him. A few days later, Jet Vac discovers the location of Chef Pepperjack and is informed that he is working on a recipe to destroy Skylands. So, the Skylanders decide to disguise themselves as customers in order to infiltrate the restaurant, but due to a delay in the order, Eruptor explodes with rage and ends up ruining the disguise of his entire team. Thanks to their hot-tempered friend, the Skylanders are unable to fulfill their mission and Pepperjack remains at large. From that day on, Master Eon advised Eruptor to have some therapy sessions with Hugo and, after a few weeks of treatment, the results began to show. Now that he has someone to talk to about his problems, Eruptor learns to control his emotions instead of letting situations control him. A month later, the day of the chili eating competition arrives and Chef Pepperjack prepares his special recipe to make the Skylanders sick. Seeing his friends devouring that delicious chili, Eruptor decides to take a walk, as he knows that spicy food makes him angry. Minutes later, when the recipe starts to take effect, the Academy's most powerful warriors are completely unable to fight because they are suffering from a severe stomach ache. At that moment, Chaos and Pepperjack take the opportunity to put their plan into practice and scatter burrito bombs around the library. When he returns to find out the result of the competition, Eruptor finds his friends on the ground and learns that the villains intend to blow up Skylander Academy. Upon hearing this, Eruptor's rage is activated and he flies like a rocket towards the library. When the villains light the fuse to explode burrito bombs, the Skylander appears. Then Chaos and Pepperjack decide to jump off the island, otherwise they will be eliminated. To save the library, Eruptor decides to devour the burritos and manages to contain the explosion inside his stomach. Minutes later, his friends show up and find a pool of lava on the ground. When everyone starts to think that their team member has perished, Eruptor regenerates and celebrates the fact that he has managed to channel his anger in a useful way. The following week, during the Skylander Academy Music Festival, Wolfgang uses his harp to bewitch Ka-Boom and manages to get into the stadium. Imagining that some villain might show up during the concert, Jet Vac and his friends split up to guard the perimeter and Spyro has to fly over to ensure people's safety. Trying to enter the festival without a ticket, Chaos is thrown out and Ka-Boom blows him up. At this point, the villain is spotted by Spyro and creates a distraction to escape. After opening a hole in the wall surrounding the stadium, Chaos manages to break into the festival and the dragon goes after his team to inform them of the enemy's presence. However, before Spyro could find his companions, Wolfgang took to the stage and bewitched everyone in the audience, including Chaos. When this happens, Pop Fizz, his former rock partner, shows up to stop him. 20 years ago, the pair had a band, but split up after Wolfgang decided to use his music to control his fans. After that, Pop decided to join the Skylander Academy and became a teacher. Realizing that his old friend is trying to create an army of zombies, Pop uses his instrument to destroy Wolfgang's harp and frees all those who have been bewitched by him. Now that he's without his powers, the villain tries to escape, but Elf manages to surround him and enlists Jet Vax's help to take him down. Then Kaboom appears and drags the intruder out of the stadium. Realizing that his ally has been defeated, Chaos tries to flee, but ends up being thrown out of the show as well. The next morning, after a long night's sleep, Master Eon gets up and realizes that his beard has disappeared. Furious, he goes to talk to his fellow Skylanders and claims that someone has used dark magic to steal it, but is completely ignored. Meanwhile, in his palace, Chaos is happier than ever, because now he has finally achieved his dream of having hair. That day, for the first time in his life, the villain is happy to receive a visit from his mother, because instead of humiliating him, Cassandra compliments her son's looks. Now, his next mission is to use his new hairstyle to win over Golden Queen, and Chaos manages to convince her to abandon Wolfgang to be with him. That evening, after dinner, the young man asks for his beloved's hand in marriage and, to his surprise, the Golden Queen accepts. Feeling ashamed of his new appearance, Master Eon decides to leave the academy and travels to Sheep Island. While he's taking a nap, Chaos appears with his fiancée and can hardly recognize the wizard when he sees him without his beard. Upon waking up, Eon spots the thief who stole his most precious possession and attacks him to get his beard back. After finally retrieving it, the master returns to his library and the Golden Queen ends her engagement to Chaos. Due to the numerous attacks that the academy has suffered lately, Professor Pop has decided to create a machine capable of predicting the evil deeds that each villain will commit. Thanks to this invention, the Skylanders have the chance to act even before the villains and manage to capture them before any threat occurs. In a few weeks, all the evil in Skylands is neutralized, so Spyro and his friends have to think of new activities to devote their free time to. One day, in the middle of the night, the Skylanders wake up to an earthquake and discover that there is a mysterious black hole spinning in the sky. Analyzing this phenomenon, Pop says that if nothing is done, the entire Skylands universe will soon be destroyed. To try and prevent this from happening, Spyro decides to fly into the maelstrom and attacks it with his fireballs, but ends up being sucked into the black hole. Within minutes, all the islands of Skylands begin to be affected by the storm and the residents start to panic. After being sucked into the maelstrom, Spyro realizes that the black hole was created as a result of the imbalance caused by him and his team. By eliminating evil before it even happened, all evil condensed into that dark sphere that is about to destroy the universe. To protect his people, Spyro must destroy the black hole and, in doing so, evil returns to the villains. Luckily, the dragon manages to get out of the mess alive and, when he returns to the academy, he and his friends come across a new visitor. At this point, Crash Bandicoot introduces himself and says he has no idea how he ended up in that place. His last memory is of being on Wumpa Islands about to free his friend Twana from the clutches of Dr. Neocortex. Still confused, Crash asks for Skylanders' help to return to his universe, as he needs to stop this guy from creating an army of mutant animals that will be used to take over the world. While thinking of a way to send the visitor back home, Master Eon says that he will need black magic to create an interdimensional rift. To do this, he enlists the help of Spyro and his friends to find a dark relic with which Eon can combine his powers to create a passage to Crash's world. So, that night, the group travels to the Fallen Forest to look for the relic and encounters some trolls trying to devour a couple of Mabbis. While trying to save Claire and Gary, the Skylanders realize that their powers don't work in that forest and Jet Vac begins to structure a rescue plan. However, before he has even finished explaining his strategy, Crash decides to act and uses his fighting skills to defeat the trolls. After setting off all the dynamite, the marsupial rescues the Mabbis and manages to escape before the explosion. After seeing Crash in action, Spyro becomes his #1 fan, as he is impressed by his style and incredible battle skills. In an attempt to prove that he is also an excellent warrior, the dragon decides to face Chompy alone, but ends up being captured by him. When he realizes that he is surrounded by Skylanders, the villain decides to escape and take Spyro prisoner. Suddenly, Chaos appears in the forest and asks for Chompy's help to open his mother's spellbook. But instead of doing that, the old man tries to steal the book and is attacked by Chaos. Just as the villains were about to start a duel, Crash appears and stops the fight. After taking the book, the marsupial attacks Chaos and manages to defeat him. Meanwhile, the rest of the team frees Spyro. Now that Crash has managed to get hold of a dark relic, the group returns to the academy and gives the book to Master Eon. With that powerful item in hand, the wizard finally manages to open the portal and Crash says goodbye to his new friends before returning home. After mixing his powers with dark magic, Eon feels completely exhausted and says he needs to rest. While trying to study the contents of that book, the master becomes increasingly ill and tells Hugo that his body is being taken over by darkness. To contain the dark magic that runs through his veins, the wizard asks the Skylanders to travel to Citadel Island, where the light energy needed to heal him is hidden. After going through the portal, the group must answer Dale's riddle, the guardian of the gate, in order to reach the nucleus of light. After filling the flask with light energy, Spyro and his friends receive a phone call from Hugo and discover that the academy is under attack. With the help of Chaos and Cassandra, the Doom Raiders manage to defeat the Skylanders and break into the secret vault hidden inside the library. When they get there, the villains find Master Eon completely weakened, so Golden Queen takes the opportunity to steal the book. Determined to be with his beloved, Chaos turns his back on his mother. At this point, Cassandra attacks her enemies with all her fury, but is completely exhausted and cannot recover her book. She then flees with the help of Glumshanks and orders Chaos never to return home, as he is banished forever. So the man has no choice but to join the Doom Raiders and leaves with Golden Queen. Soon after, the Skylanders appear and Spyro hands the vial filled with light magic to Master Eon. After drinking the liquid, the wizard is instantly cured and says that he will take the book of Cassandra to a secluded place where no one else can use its powers to hurt other people. But instead of doing that, the wizard decides to return it to its true owner, because he knows that Cassandra is the only sorceress capable of controlling the entity that is trapped inside that book. So what did you think of this series? Leave it in the comments below.